Good morning to everybody at the Chief Inspector's event today. My name is Paul Warner. I'm the Director of Employment and Skills at the Association of Employment and Learning Providers. And although unfortunately I am unable to join you in person today for this event due to some last minute circumstances which I'm afraid were unavoidable, I'm very glad that by the wonders of technology I'm able still to contribute to what has become, I think, quite an important regular date in the calendar of events in this sector, and one which AELP has been delighted to be part of putting on for the last few years. Now, as you may know, the original purpose of the event today was to disseminate the Chief Inspector's report, but as we now know, we don't actually have it yet, so it is a little difficult to make any firm pronouncements on what the Chief Inspector may have to say. We can, however, make a few guesses, which I'll do in a minute, in the full knowledge that if he doesn't say anything on the lines that I'm about to talk about, I'm probably going to look a little bit daft about this time tomorrow, but we'll take the risk. I'd also like to spend a few minutes looking at the implications of what he says, whatever that may be. What does it really mean? What will it really mean for independent training providers? So let's start with the sort of things that he might be saying by taking a look at the most recent figures released by Ofsted about learning and skills inspections, which came out actually only last week and covered the period between September 2012 and August 2013. Now, anecdotally, my guess is that many independent training providers, ITPs, might feel that our part of the sector is going to come out of all this a little beaten up around the edges. But the stats that have been released from Ofsted, if they're anything to go by, for the year up to the end of August 2013, they don't in themselves actually look too awful. Now, there were 360 inspections in that time, 154 of which were ITPs. Overall, across all inspections, 3% of providers were found to be outstanding, although only one of the 154 ITPs was found to be outstanding. There have been more since, of course, but we are talking up to the end of August. 9% of all the providers inspected were, however, found to be inadequate, and amongst the ITPs, actually, the figure was 10%. So, just to recap, because we're not able to look at a graph or an illustration at the moment, but the key figures are, for ITPs, in the period up to the end of August 2013, only one out of 154 ITPs was outstanding, and about 15 or about 10% were inadequate. Now, the feeling that I've picked up from around the place is that this is not good. However, compared to the year before, the inspections the year before, which were admittedly, albeit they were undertaken under a different framework, I don't think we're actually looking at any vast difference in performance. The same period in 2011-12 also showed 10% inadequate. And although the percentage of outstandings has dropped from 7% last year to less than 1% overall, this actually means that the numbers of providers rated as good or satisfactory or requires improvement, as Ofsted prefer to term it, rose from 82% to 90% year on year. And at 90%, we have a higher percentage of providers that are good or satisfactory than at any time since 2007. Now, the caveat to all this is, of course, that we don't know actually what the Chief Inspector's report is going to use, the figures that he's going to use. We don't know that they're going to be the same figures or percentages, but reason would suggest we're not going to be that far off. The importance of this all, therefore, lies in how you interpret this data and what you do with it as a result. There is quite a difference between a headline in FE Week or the like that says ITP results show higher percentage at good or satisfactory than ever before. And there's a difference between that and one that says percentage of outstanding ITPs falls from 7% to less than 1%. Now both those headlines are actually true, but I think I know which one might make the more interesting headline. But the truth is that on these figures, at least, in relative terms, ITPs are not doing that badly. Against a more rigorous framework than we previously had, yes, less of us are outstanding, but there's no apparent change in the percentages that are inadequate. And most of the rest of us have actually just switched chairs between good and satisfactory. Now, satisfactory, we all know, means that Ofsted think they require improvement. But do any of us seriously think that if you are good, then Ofsted think you don't require improvement? Of course not. However good we are, we always require improvement. We know that. We know it because it's good business practice. We also know it because when we look at how the colleges have done as a sector compared to ITPs, we find that in general they've gone up the scale. And well done to them. So it's perfectly possible to do that. And therefore ITP should be doing that as well. Full stop, no arguments. But overall, if you're good or satisfactory, it makes little difference. You're still going to want to get better, and you'll be using your Ofsted report to do it. But there is another more pressing reason why as an ITP, you will always want to be requiring improvement of yourself. There's a story written by the great horror author Stephen King under the pen name of Richard Bachman called The Long Walk. Now, I won't go into the details of it, but the premise is of a dystopian future where the most popular spectator sport is a mass walk, where participants start and have to walk at 3 miles per hour or more without stopping, because whenever they drop their speed below 3 miles per hour, they get shot dead. And so it goes on until only one person is left alive and they're declared the winner. So yes, it's another cheery slice of sunshine from Stephen King to brighten all our days. Now, unfortunately, however, I think the sector is in a bit of a situation where getting a grade 4 for an ITP is rather like something out of The Long Walk. Because you get a grade 4, you're walking at less than 3 miles per hour, and you get, in contractual terms, shot dead. Your contract gets stopped instantly. There's no chance for plans to consider improvements. There's no chance to consult with local authorities about the effect that closure would have on the local area. You lose your contract. EFA, SFA, just like that, gone. So does Ofsted really think that if you find yourself in an inspection zone anywhere other than outstanding, that ITPs are going to say, well, that's all right then, I don't require any further improvement. I shall just coast along a bit and I'll hope it all comes out in the wash again in a few years' time? Or is it more likely that ITPs will be looking over their shoulders at how close that kill zone of inadequate is, and making plans to put as much distance as they possibly can between themselves and it? Frankly, even if you're outstanding, my guess is that you're going to be thinking along the lines that next time you have an inspection, it's going to be even harder than this time. So you don't let your guard down, and you want to keep getting better anyway. Now clearly it's this anxiety which is driving the rationale of the EFA and the SFA in giving no second chances if you drop into that kill zone of grade 4. They want you to be constantly on your toes, with ITPs knowing that anything less than a grade 3 could well put you instantly out of business. And there is maybe some sense in that, because nothing focuses the mind and incentivizes you more to make sure that you stay up that pecking order quite as efficiently as knowing that you're going to be instantly eliminated if you don't. But does it make any sense? Now, we know that Ofsted have got tougher this year, and yet on the face of it, on the whole, from the figures we've seen so far, the performance of ITPs overall is not actually judged to be significantly worse than at the same time last year, which, when you think about it, must mean that in absolute terms, ITPs have actually got better. We just don't call it better anymore. We've changed the labels. But the sophistication of that sort of analysis seems to escape the SFA and the EFA, because they insist on thinking that inadequate now is the same thing as inadequate last year, and therefore deserves instant summary termination of your contract now as it did last year. Now, the impact of this sort of thinking is being shown right now in areas around the country where this decision of closure has meant local authorities have suddenly been stripped of provision they thought was in absolute terms pretty good, on the basis of a judgment that, whilst it's not exactly comparing apples and oranges by comparing last year's framework to this year's framework, it certainly has the feel of perhaps we're comparing Granny Smith's apples against Golden Delicious. Overall, our sector, in my view, looks like, in qualitative terms, it's continuing to perform. Of course we can get better. Of course we should get better. Nobody's arguing that point. And the toughening of the criteria on which we base those judgments by Ofsted might hurt sometimes at the point of delivery. But overall, we can come out of it, as we do now, knowing that firstly, as a sector, we are, in absolute terms, getting better. And secondly, at an individual level, knowing where and how we can get better still in the future. So, what's my response to a projection about what the Chief Inspector's report may say? That firstly, it is tougher for us now than it was last year. That secondly, actually that's to be welcomed, because it's pushing us to be better still. And thirdly, that apparently on the face of it all, as a sector, we are broadly meeting that challenge. But that fourthly, on the face of it, the SFA and the EFA are not recognising the worth of Ofsted and their reports in the same way. Instead of seeing them as we do, as a chance for the sector to improve itself as a going concern, they seem to continue to see it as a chance to almost divest the sector of provision, and thereby to go about a usually long-winded and slightly subjective task of trying to procure new provision to replace it, when surely improving what is already there would often be the better option. But that's certainly the case with FE colleges, where, in all honesty, there are a number of steps in the process before a contract would even considered being terminated on the basis of a grade 4. And all of those steps allow the college concerned, firstly, to come up with a plan to improve the weaknesses that have been identified. So EFA and SFA appear happy to shoot ITPs at the first opportunity, yet somehow feel that allowing improvement plans to be put in place at colleges is not in any way iniquitous. Well, here's the thing. Yes, it is. It's the same Ofsted framework that we're all being judged against. It's potentially the same provision that we're delivering. It's potentially the same cohort of people that we're delivering it to. If it's right that improvement plans should be allowed traction for one type of organisation undertaking this provision, why is it not the same for all of them? Providers of all shapes and sizes are taking the right approach with Ofsted, its inspections and its results, and ITPs are amongst them. It's about time that this innate drive to improve is properly recognised by the funding authorities for what it is, and that all institutions are given an equal chance to use their Ofsted results to their best advantage, ultimately for the benefit of learners. Once again, my extensive apologies, I'm not able to join you there in person today, but I hope I've given you something to think about, and I hope you enjoy what is, I am sure, going to be a constructive and useful day at the rest of today's events. Thank you very much for your attention.